You guys ready? All right, let's get this show on the road.
10 seconds.
Well, this should be short and easy, am I right?
You're right.
All right.
Really card, you know that.
All right, 5 seconds.
All right.
3,
All right. Let's
2,
do this.
Want to get something to eat after this?
1. You're on there.
And welcome to Channel 10 Economics Podcast. I am your host, Brian Diaz, with my special guest, economist Rodrigo De La Torre. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Soylent and Little Caesars. I like to say a great combination of food and drink.
I agree.
Without their help, wouldn't have had this podcast to be possible. So, first question I'd like to ask you, and I'm sure many of our new viewers would also like to know, what do you think were the main causes of the financial crisis in 2008?
Well, to really explain it in depth, the financial crisis of 2008 was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. It impacted the entire world, not just the United States. Out of many causes for the financial crisis, I will list only 3 of them. Number 1 being the growth of the housing bubble. Average U.S. housing prices declined 20%. As the prices declined, borrowers, with adjustable rate mortgages couldn't refinance to avoid the higher payments combined with the rising interest rates began to default. 2, the weak and fraudulent underwriting practices. Proof of income were de-emphasized. Loans quickly moved to a full documentation to no documentation.
So what you're saying is that even loans that were not approved or checked on their backgrounds were still being approved?
That is correct, Brian. 100%. Nothing was required to get a loan anymore. 3, shadow banking. Investment banks that didn't fall under the primary regulatory purview of the Federal Reserve caused most of the damage. 20 financial institutions perpetrated this crisis, and all failed from business practices to ethical behavior.
So while all this was still going on, what was being done?
Absolutely nothing, Brian.
Well, as crazy as that sounds, it's nice to know what had happened, and it will lead on to our other question, where what steps could have been taken to stop this crisis from happening?
There are 2 things that could have been done to prevent this whole financial crisis. First, the regulation of mortgage brokers and hedge funds. The mortgage brokers were shielded from the consequences of bad loans. Second being that there should have been an early recognition that there was a credibility problem. The government would be the ones to buy the bad loans.
So instead of people themselves buying these loans, you're suggesting that the government should have bought them first before anyone in the country would have, mistakenly lost the money on these loans.
Yes.
Well, hopefully it has been a couple of years since that time, and our economy seems to be going down a rough path, and hopefully the new administration of Trump could possibly get their act together. So with that note, I'd like to thank you for coming on this podcast. It was a pleasure to have you, and if we ever need you again, I hope you can join us again.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I hope I can come back soon. I love teaching the youth and informing everyone about the crises that we might face later on in the future.
Thank you.